All right, so are you ready to dive into some serious economic theory?
Mm.
Because you sent over a whole bunch of articles on Kondratiev waves, and this stuff is like right up my alley.
Oh, yeah.
It's all about these huge, like really long economic cycles.
Hmm.
We're talking decades
Yeah.
that are supposedly tied to like these big leaps in technology and innovation.
It is a pretty cool idea, isn't it? That like the rise and fall of whole economies could be like connected to the invention of like groundbreaking technologies.
Absolutely. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's
Yeah.
start with the basics for our listeners who might not be familiar with this. What exactly are Kondratiev waves?
So the theory, it proposes that we experience these long-term economic cycles. So roughly like 50 to 60 years each.
Wow.
And they're marked by periods of like boom and bust. So these cycles or waves are named after this Soviet economist, Nikolai Kondratiev. He published a book on the subject back in 1926.
Okay, so are we talking about like the dot-com bubble and the 2008 financial crisis? Are those Kondratiev waves in action?
Not quite. So those are more like short-term fluctuations.
Okay.
Kondratiev waves are like these much bigger overarching trends that plow out over generations.
Right.
So think about like the Industrial Revolution or the rise of like the digital age. Those are the kinds of shifts that Kondratiev was looking at.
Okay, I'm starting to see the bigger picture here.
Yeah.
But here's something that really surprised me when I was reading up on this. Kondratiev wasn't actually the first person to come up with this idea of long economic cycles, was he?
You're right, he wasn't.
Really?
Two Dutch economists, Jacob van Gelderen and Salomon de Wolf, were writing about similar 50 to 60-year cycles even before Kondratiev published his work.
Wow, makes you wonder how much credit is given where credit is due, right?
Right.
But I digress. Let's get back to Kondratiev and his waves.
Okay.
How did he explain these cycles? What did he think was driving these long-term economic shifts?
So Kondratiev believed that technological innovation was the key. He argued that major breakthroughs in technology tend to like cluster together. And these clusters lead to these periods of intense economic growth and expansion.
So it's like a domino effect.
Right.
Like one invention leads to another, and suddenly whole industries are transforming, which then impacts the entire economy.
Precisely. Think about the steam engine.
Yeah.
It wasn't just like a cool invention.
Yeah.
It revolutionized transportation and manufacturing and ultimately like the whole structure of society.
Right.
And Kondratiev argued that these kinds of technological revolutions happen in waves, each one building on the one before it.
Okay, that makes sense. But let's break this down a bit further. What exactly are the phases of a Kondratiev wave? I read about something called expansion, stagnation, and recession, but I'm not sure I fully grasped it.
It's a bit like the seasons, actually.
Yeah.
You have periods of growth and prosperity followed by periods of like slowdown and decline. So Kondratiev initially proposed 3 phases: expansion, stagnation, and recession. But a more modern interpretation breaks it down into 4 periods: expansion, turning point, stagnation, and recovery.
So it's like an economic roller coaster ride with its ups and downs, but playing out over decades instead of minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
And each period has its own unique characteristics,
Yeah.
right? Like, what can we expect to see during these different phases?
Exactly. So during the expansion phase, you see like rapid growth. Innovation flourishes, new industries emerge, and there's a general sense of optimism and prosperity.
Right.
This is followed by the turning point, which can be marked by like a financial crisis or some other kind of shock to the system.
Right.
Then comes the stagnation phase where growth slows down,
Yeah.
unemployment might rise, and there's a sense of uncertainty about the future.
Yeah.
Finally, there's the recovery phase where the economy begins to stabilize
Okay.
and lays the groundwork for like the next wave of innovation.
It's fascinating to think about how these cycles might be playing out even now without us even realizing it.
Yeah.
But let's talk about the specific technologies that Kondratiev linked to his waves.
Okay.
I remember reading about coal and steam railways and electrifications. Is that all accurate?
That's right. Kondratiev's original waves were based on those very innovations.
Wow.
He saw these technologies as the driving forces behind the major economic transformations of his time.
It makes you wonder, what will the defining technologies of our era be? But before we jump too far ahead, I want to talk about this economist, Daniel Imula, who's built upon Kondratiev's work.
Okay.
I found his take on Kondratiev waves particularly intriguing.
Mahula's work is definitely worth exploring.
Yeah.
He's taken the basic framework of Kondratiev waves and adapted it to modern society. But instead of identifying 4 or 5 waves, He proposes that there have been 6 distinct waves,
Oh,
each one driven by a specific cluster of technological innovations.
6 waves. That's a lot to unpack. And I'm guessing these waves are all neat, kitey 50-year cycles, right?
You're catching on quickly. One of Amihula's key arguments is that these cycles are actually getting shorter.
Oh.
He believes that technological advancement is accelerating, which means each new wave is compressed,
Right.
leading to even faster economic and societal transformations.
Okay, my mind is officially blown.
Hmm.
So let's dive into Amihula's 6 waves.
Mm.
I'm ready for all the juicy details. Where do we begin?
Let's start with the first wave, which might surprise you.
Okay.
Mihula calls it the Financial Agricultural Revolution, and it spans from 1600 to 1780.
Wait. Finance and agriculture. That doesn't exactly scream technological revolution to me.
Perhaps not in the way that we typically think about it, but the innovations of this period were truly groundbreaking.
Okay.
Think about the development of modern finance in Holland, the introduction of private land ownership, early agricultural machines,
Wow.
and the practice of crop rotation. These were radical changes that had a profound impact on society, and they laid the foundation for the industrial era to come.
So it's like the roots of a tree. We might only see the branches and leaves, but it's the foundation that allows everything else to grow.
Exactly. And that brings us to Amula's second wave, the one we all know and love, the Industrial Revolution.
Yes.
This wave, lasting from 1780 to 1880, is when things really start to take off.
This is the era of factory steam engines and mass production.
Precisely. It's the era of coal and iron, textiles, and railways.
Right.
The world was transformed by the power of steam and the rise of the factory system.
Yeah.
But it's important to remember this wave wouldn't have been possible without the groundwork laid by the financial agricultural revolution that came before it.
I see it's all connected. Each wave builds on the innovations of the past. So what comes next?
Amula's third wave is what he calls the technical revolution, spanning from 1880 to 1940.
Okay.
This is often referred to as the Second Industrial Revolution.
Okay.
And it brought us some game-changing inventions like the automobile, the airplane, and electrical devices.
Okay, now we're talking. This is starting to feel more like the world we know today.
Absolutely. The technical revolution also saw the rise of the modern chemical industry, which has had a profound impact on everything from agriculture to medicine. And let's not forget about the radio.
Right.
This new technology transformed communication and brought the world closer together.
It's amazing how quickly things were progressing at this point.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing the pace of innovation only accelerates from here.
You're right. And that brings us to Amihula's fourth wave, the scientific technical revolution, lasting from 1940 to 1985.
Okay.
This wave is all about the rise of the air industry, nuclear power, astronautics, synthetic materials, the burgeoning oil industry, and the early days of cybernetics.
Wow, from horse-drawn carriages to spaceflight in just a few centuries.
Yeah.
It's incredible to think about the sheer scale of progress that happened within a single human lifetime during this period.
It really is. And the innovations of this wave lead the groundwork for the one that's perhaps most familiar to us, the information and telecommunications revolution.
Ah, yes, the digital age. This is where computers, the internet, and mobile phones enter the scene, right?
Yeah. Exactly. Wimihula marks this wave as lasting from 1985 to 2015.
Okay.
And it's the wave that has fundamentally reshaped how we live, work, and interact with the world.
And I'm sensing that this is where things start to get really interesting, especially in the context of Mihula's theory about these waves getting shorter.
You're on the right track. The 2008 financial crisis, according to Mihula, wasn't just a random event. It was a signal that the information and telecommunications revolution was entering its final phase.
Which means?
Which means we're likely already in the midst of Mihula's sixth wave.
What?
He calls it the hypothetical wave of the post-informational technological revolution, and he predicted it would begin around 2015.
Okay, hold on. Hypothetical wave. Does that mean even he wasn't sure what this next wave would look like?
Not exactly. He had some pretty strong ideas about the potential driving forces of this wave, but he acknowledged that the future is always, to some extent, uncertain.
Fair enough. So what did he think would define this sixth wave? Are we talking flying cars and teleportation devices?
Well, maybe not flying cars just yet. But Imihula pointed to some pretty mind-blowing sectors as potential leaders of this new wave.
Okay.
The Internet of Things, renewable energy resource efficiency, clean technology, biomedical sciences, nanotechnology, biotechnology, the pharmaceutical industry, alternative fuels, and robotics.
Okay, that's a lot to digest. And I'm sensing this is where we need to take a pause and really delve into the specifics of each of these areas.
Yeah.
But you know what? I think we should save that for part 2 of our deep dive.
I agree. We've covered a lot of ground already, and there's much more to explore.
Okay, so welcome back to our deep dive into Kondratiev waves.
Yes.
Last time we were talking about Daniel Lemihula's 6 waves of technological innovation and how we might already be in the midst of the 6th wave, the post-informational technological revolution.
Yeah, it's pretty wild to think about.
It's all pretty mind-blowing stuff.
It is.
And I'm eager to dig deeper.
Yes, let's unpack what this potential 6th wave might have in store for us. As we were talking about before, Mihula highlighted several key sectors: the Internet of Things, renewable energy, resource efficiency, clean technology, biomedical sciences, nanotechnology, biotechnology, the pharmaceutical industry, alternative fuels, and robotics.
Wow, that is quite a list, and it makes me both excited and a little bit intimidated, to be honest. But let's take it one step at a time.
Sure.
You mentioned the Internet of Things. I've heard that term thrown around a lot, but I'm still not entirely sure what it means. Is it just like having a smart fridge that orders groceries for you?
That's one small example, but the Internet of Things is far more expansive. It's about connecting everyday objects to the internet, allowing them to collect and exchange data. So imagine a world where your car can communicate with traffic lights to optimize traffic flow, or your house can adjust its temperature and lighting based on your preferences and habits. It's about creating a network of interconnected devices that can communicate and collaborate to make our lives more efficient, convenient, and even safer.
Okay, I see the potential there, but I also can't help but think about all the data privacy concerns. It seems like a bit of a slippery slope, doesn't it?
That's a valid concern, and it's definitely one that we need to address as this technology evolves.
Right.
Striking the right balance between innovation and privacy will be crucial. But let's move on to another area. Mihula highlighted renewable energy.
Okay.
This is a topic that's close to many people's hearts, especially with the growing concerns about climate change. What are some of the key innovations we might see in this field?
I'm particularly interested in the potential of solar and wind power. It seems like those technologies are becoming more efficient and affordable all the time.
You're absolutely right. Solar and wind are likely to play a major role in the transition to a more sustainable energy future, but we also shouldn't overlook other promising areas such as geothermal energy, tidal power, and even fusion energy. Fusion, in particular, has the potential to be a game changer, as it could provide a virtually limitless source of clean energy.
Right.
However, it's still in its early stages of development.
Yeah, fusion energy always feels like one of those things that's always 20 years away.
Right.
But it is exciting to think about the possibilities.
Yeah.
Now, you also mentioned resource efficiency. What exactly does that entail? Is it just about recycling and reducing waste?
It's certainly part of it, but it's also about finding ways to use resources more efficiently throughout the entire life cycle of a product or process. This includes designing products that are more durable and repairable using recycled materials whenever possible, and finding ways to recover and reuse valuable resources at the end of a product's life. It's about moving towards a more circular economy where waste is minimized and resources are constantly being regenerated.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's not just about being less wasteful, but about fundamentally rethinking how we use and manage resources.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about the Internet of Things, renewable energy, and resource efficiency.
Right.
Now let's delve into something that always sparks my imagination: biomedical sciences.
Okay.
What kind of breakthroughs are we talking about here?
This is a field with immense potential, and it's one that could have a profound impact on human health and longevity. We're talking about advancements in genetic engineering, personalized medicine, regenerative medicine, and even the possibility of extending lifespan.
Whoa, extending lifespan. That sounds straight out of science fiction.
It might sound far-fetched, but scientists are making remarkable progress in understanding the aging process and developing interventions that could potentially slow it down or even reverse it. Imagine a world where people could live healthy, active lives well into their hundreds or even beyond. It's a possibility that we might see within our lifetimes.
It's hard to even wrap my head around that.
Right.
But let's move on to another area. You mentioned nanotechnology.
Okay.
This one always seems a bit mysterious to me. Is it just about building tiny robots?
It's a common misconception, but nanotechnology is much broader than that. It involves manipulating materials at the atomic and molecular level. Think about it this way. Everything in the world is made up of atoms. Nanotechnology allows us to rearrange those atoms in precise ways to create new materials with extraordinary properties. Imagine materials that are stronger than steel but lighter than feathers, or coatings that can repel dirt and water, or sensors that can detect minute traces of pollutants. The possibilities are truly vast.
Okay, that's starting to make more sense. It's about harnessing the power of the very building blocks of matter.
Exactly.
And how does biotechnology fit into all of this? Is it just about genetically modified crops?
Biotechnology encompasses a wide range of applications, from agriculture to medicine to environmental remediation.
Okay.
It's about using living organisms or their components to create products and processes that benefit society. Think about developing new drugs, creating biofuels, engineering bacteria to clean up pollution, or even using gene editing techniques to cure genetic diseases.
It's like taking the power of nature and using it to solve some of humanity's most pressing challenges. That's incredible.
Yeah.
And speaking of pressing challenges, let's talk about alternative fuels. I know you mentioned hydrogen as a potential game changer.
Yes, hydrogen has the potential to be a clean and sustainable fuel source, especially for transportation. When hydrogen is burned, it produces only water as a byproduct,
Okay.
making it a much cleaner option than fossil fuels. There are still some challenges to overcome, such as developing efficient and cost-effective ways to produce and store hydrogen, but it's a technology that holds great promise.
It all sounds very futuristic. But I can't help but think about those old images of hydrogen-powered zeppelins going up in flames.
Right.
Safety has to be a major concern, right?
Absolutely. Safety is paramount, and researchers are working diligently to ensure that hydrogen can be used safely and reliably. And remember, we already use hydrogen in many industrial processes safely and effectively. It's about applying those same principles to new applications.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, the last area on our list is robotics. I have to admit, this is the one that both fascinates and worries me the most. Are we really talking about a world with robot butlers and self-driving cars everywhere?
Robotics and artificial intelligence are certainly fields with immense potential to transform our lives. Self-driving cars are already being tested on roads around the world.
Yeah.
And robots are increasingly being used in manufacturing, healthcare, and even in our homes.
But what about the potential downsides? I've heard a lot of talk about robots taking our jobs. Is that a legitimate concern?
It's a valid concern, and it's one that we need to address thoughtfully. The reality is that automation will likely lead to some job displacement, but it will also create new jobs and opportunities. The key is to adapt our education and training systems to prepare people for the jobs of the future, which will require skills in areas like critical thinking, problem solving, creativity, and collaboration.
So it's not about fearing the robots, but about learning to work alongside them. And it's about ensuring that everyone benefits from these technological advancements, not just a select few.
You've hit the nail on the head. These are complex issues with no easy answers.
Right.
But the more we understand these technologies and their potential impacts, the better equipped we'll be to navigate the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead.
Well said. I feel like we've covered a lot of ground here.
Yeah.
But I have a feeling we've only just scratched the surface of this sixth wave and its potential implications. There's so much more to explore. You know what? I think we need to dedicate part 3 of our deep dive to exploring the potential downsides of all this technological progress, as well as addressing some of the criticisms of Kondratiev wave theory itself.
I agree. It's important to approach these topics with a balanced perspective and consider the full range of potential outcomes, both positive and negative.
Welcome back to our deep dive into Kondratiev waves. So far, we've explored this fascinating theory about long economic cycles that are driven by, technological innovation. We've journeyed through history from those early agricultural advancements all the way to the digital age. And now we're standing at the cusp of what could be a sixth wave. It's post-informational technological revolution.
Yeah.
But before we get too caught up in all the excitement,
Right.
we need to take a step back and consider the potential downsides.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Every
Realize.
technological leap forward comes with, potential risks and challenges. It's like crossing a river. You might reach the other side and discover all these new opportunities, but there's always a chance of, encountering rapids or hidden currents along the way.
Okay, I like that analogy.
Uh-huh.
So as we navigate this potential sixth wave,
Yeah.
what are some of the rapids or currents that we need to be mindful of? What are the potential downsides of all this technological progress?
Well, one concern that often comes up is the impact on employment.
Yeah.
As automation and AI become more sophisticated, there's a worry that machines will take over jobs that are currently done by humans. This could lead to widespread unemployment and social unrest, especially if we don't adapt our education and training systems to prepare people for the jobs of the future.
Right, that's the classic, robots are going to steal our jobs argument. But I'm curious, do you think it's really that simple? Couldn't the rise of new technologies also create new jobs and opportunities that we can't even imagine yet?
It's not a simple equation. While some jobs will inevitably be displaced by automation, new jobs will emerge. The key is to be adaptable, to embrace lifelong learning, and to focus on developing skills that complement technology rather than compete with it.
Okay.
Think about like creativity, critical thinking, problem solving, emotional intelligence, and complex communication.
Yeah.
These are all areas where humans will continue to have an edge over machines.
So it's not about fearing the robots, but about learning to dance with them, so to speak.
Right.
And it's about ensuring that everyone benefits from these advancements, not just a select few,
Absolutely.
but beyond the potential economic disruptions, are there other downsides that we need to consider?
Absolutely. One area that often sparks debate is the ethical implications of certain technologies.
Mm,
We touched on transhumanism earlier, the idea of using technology to enhance human capabilities.
yeah.
While this could lead to like incredible advancements in health and longevity, it also raises some serious ethical questions.
Yeah, that's where things start to feel like a science fiction movie gone wrong. If we can enhance ourselves with technology, who gets to decide what enhancements are acceptable?
Mhm.
Could we end up creating a society where the enhanced have an unfair advantage over the unenhanced?
Those are exactly the kinds of questions that we need to grapple with.
Yeah.
When we start tinkering with the very essence of what it means to be human, we enter uncharted territory.
Right.
And we need to proceed cautiously with open and honest conversations involving scientists, ethicists, policymakers, and the public.
It seems like every technological advancement comes with this potential for both good and bad.
Yeah.
It's like we're constantly trying to strike a balance between progress and responsibility.
That's a great way to put it. And that brings us to another potential downside: sustainability. Many of these innovations, while exciting, rely on resources that are finite or have, environmental impacts.
For example, the shift to electric vehicles is great for reducing carbon emissions,
Mm.
but it requires vast amounts of lithium for batteries, which has its own set of environmental and social costs.
Exactly. We can't just assume that technological progress automatically equals progress for humanity or the planet. We need to think holistically, considering the entire life cycle of these technologies
Right.
and striving for solutions that are both innovative and sustainable.
Okay, so we've explored some of the potential downsides of this sixth wave, but before we wrap up, I want to circle back to Kondratiev wave theory itself.
Okay.
You mentioned earlier that there are some criticisms of this theory. Can you elaborate on that?
Of course. One common critique is that the theory relies heavily on historical data, which means it might not accurately predict the future. The world is constantly changing, and there's no guarantee that these cycles will continue in the same way they have in the past.
So it's not a crystal ball. It can't tell us exactly what's going to happen next,
Right.
but it can offer like a framework for understanding how innovation has shaped the world we live in.
Yeah.
And it can help us anticipate potential challenges and opportunities.
Precisely. And it's important to remember that Kondratiev wave theory is just one lens through which to view economic and technological development. There are other factors to consider,
Right.
like political events, social trends, and even random chance.
The world is complex, and there are always multiple forces at play.
Yeah.
But even with its limitations, I think Kondratiev wave theory offers a valuable perspective, especially in a time when technological change is accelerating at like an unprecedented pace.
I agree. It encourages us to think about the long-term consequences of our innovations and to approach these advancements with both enthusiasm and caution.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Kondratiev waves,
Mm-hmm.
what's the key takeaway for our listeners? What do we want them to walk away with?
I think the main message is this. We live in a time of extraordinary technological change, a time of both great promise and potential peril. It's a time to be informed, engaged, and thoughtful about the future that we're creating. It's a time to embrace innovation, but to do so with wisdom, foresight, and a deep sense of responsibility.
Beautifully said. It's not just about riding the waves of innovation, but about steering the ship towards a future that benefits all of humanity. And with that, we've reached the end of our deep dive. Thanks for joining us on this epic journey.